Greetings and welcome to Blue Smoke and Black Ink, the podcast where you can blow off a cheap cigar if you'd like, or just sit back and enjoy a half-hour sit down with some of America's finest writers. I'm afraid I have to disappoint you today because I'm the only writer you're going to find today, and I'm feeling a little sleepy because I was up last night waiting for everyone's Wordle reports to show up on Facebook. That's an old joke, probably outlived its usefulness. But anyway, on a more serious note, what's happening in the country, once called Palestine, is a tragedy of biblical proportions. The Jewish people, for centuries, have been, from Moses to Sandy Koufax, have been abused and hunted and slaughtered. Now the country they call their own has turned that savagery into their official government policy. And so I, of course, wrote a funny story about it. I mean, sometimes the only thing you can deal with tragedies like that are to with humor. Um, so I wrote a story about how Bob Dylan and I went to visit Netanyahu in Israel. Now, needless to say, I've never met Bob Dylan, although he did nod to me once when my son was in college. See that poster there? Where is it? There it is. We were in charge of Bob's dressing room as part of his work study. My son called me and said, Dad, maybe we'll get to meet Bob. So we spent a day getting his dressing room ready. First time I had ever heard of something called balsamic vinegar. It was all set. Bob's bus pulled up. I'm thinking I'm going to meet the guy. And they herded us all out. They got rid of all of us. Bob didn't want to see anybody. So I'm thinking to myself, well, his bus was over there. His dressing room's there. He has to come down this staircase. So with my staff shirt, I managed to wrangle my way into the bottom of the staircase. Bob came down looking like a character out of Star Wars with a little guy with a hood pulled over. And I was going to say to him, have a good show tonight, Bob. But I thought that was too demanding. So I said, I hope you have a good show tonight, Bob. And Bob nodded to me, gave me the old New York nod like that. Most people nod with dropping their head like that, but New Yorkers nod like up like that. And Bob nodded to me, and I was pretty pleased with that. So anyway, here's a story about Bob and me, completely made up. It's called Netanyahu. Bob Dylan and I were drinking beer when I said to him, I was thinking about your old Israeli pal, Netanyahu. I knew Bob preferred the double O spelling at the end of the guy's name, like the email. Bob said, Yahoo's no pal of mine. I told him, I think we should go rotten egg the guy's house. Bob tilted his head, looked at me, and asked, What? We should go chuck eggs at his house. He deserves it. Bob thought for a while, and then he said, uh, uh, okay. You might have noticed that Bob isn't as erudite in real life as he is in the recording studio. The first tactical mistake of our trip was buying the 3 dozen eggs needed for the egging before we boarded the plane to Israel, instead of picking them up once we got over there. After all, there must be egg stores in Israel, just like everywhere else. Eggs are kosher if they come from kosher birds and they don't have blood spots, which ours didn't. At the security gate, the TSA agent, a big guy with stains, pointed at his television screen and asked us, What's all these little oval shapes here? I leaned over and asked, Where? But the guy shoved me back out. Right here, he repeated, smudging his forefinger hard onto the screen. These, they look white. I told him, It's because your TV screen is black and white. He said, Even in color, they'd be white. What are they? I took an estimated guess and told him, Eggs. Bob leaned over to the counter to concur. Eggs. Again, unless you know Bob personally, You'd be surprised about how few things he says are original or interesting. The TSA asked, eggs. They're eggs? Eggs. Bob and I both thought the guy was going to initiate a line of questioning about the purpose of the cargo, about the nature of our flight. Instead, he just looked bored, like he had seen eggs before, and he asked, "Are they fragile, liquid, perishable, potentially hazardous?" Fragile, I said. Then I added, partially liquid, trying to be totally transparent. "Are they totally transparent?" the agent asked. "Translucent, I guess you'd have to say," I said, "after you crack them. They're eggs." Bob just nodded and repeated, "Eggs." The guy seemed confused, maybe by the situation, maybe by the eggs themselves, probably by the word translucent. But he was on the borderline of getting nasty, as confused people often do, when Bob managed to diffuse the situation by adding, "perishable." Sometimes Bob does get an original idea that he doesn't even bother to put down into a song. Not often, but sometimes. "Yeah, very perishable. These are eggs." We were both thinking potentially hazardous, but we didn't say a word. Now, the beginning to relax TSA told us, "All right, I'll allow it, but just this once." During the flight, we could both sense that our eggs were beginning to get smelly, but we figured that's what eggs do, so why not? Our second mistake was going to see Mr. Yahoo first. It's hard to rotten egg a guy's house after you've met him face to face. We had no trouble getting in to see him because his head of security recognized Bob and got a kick out of the fact that they both wore harmonica holders when they were working. Yahoo seemed like a nice enough fella. He told us he'd been having a rough time of it as of late. His War Department was trying to get him to shell targets on Saturday mornings. Yahoo vetoed that action on moral grounds. "Saturday? I told that fucker down at the War Office I don't fucking roll on Saturday, on Shabbos." He was starting to sound like some guy in a movie. Bob nodded and told him, "Yeah, right, Shabbos." Another problem for Yahoo. His mom kept telling him that his wife was a mashavte and that he should dump her. So he tried to hook up with Barbara Streisand, but she was dating a Sudanese rebel who, even though the guy was running a revolution, she found him to be less revolting than Yahoo himself. Bob agreed and said, "Yeah, I guess so." Another problem Yahoo was having was that these Hamas agents kept sneaking non-kosher ingredients into his food. Yahoo pronounced Hamas as ham ass, which made him chuckle. Hamas would leave food labels around his dinner table that read, "Made entirely from the secretions of creatures with cloven hooves." Yahoo said to us, "Food is just the rotted gift of strangers." Bob took out a pad and wrote it down. You could tell he was planning on using that line in a song someday. Yahoo whined that people had started confusing his name with the once popular chocolate soft drink, Yoo-hoo. Yahoo, Yoo-hoo. Bob said, "No shit." Bob's commitment to political action had dissipated over the years. So after hearing Yahoo's sad stories, Bob turned to me and said, "Ah, screw it. Let's just go home." At the Jerusalem airport for our return trip, another security agent, different country, same stains, tapped a Mossad agent on the shoulder, and they took us into this small room with an X-ray viewing machine. They slid the pictures of our unused, untossed, now putrid 3 dozen eggs onto the screen. The Mossad agent told us, "You're not boarding with these things." So Bob and I went out and hurled the eggs at a little house situated close to the airport. As we landed back home, Bob picked up a copy of USA Today and he pushed the newspaper into my hands and he pointed at a small article on page 6. It read, The summer cottage of superstar Barbara Streisand was attacked by vandals hurling eggs yesterday afternoon. Authorities believe the attack was the work of the Lebanese anti-Israeli terrorist group Hezbollah. Bob said he'd never heard of it, but it was a hard word to rhyme. So that's my Bob Dylan story. Did I show you? Yeah, I guess I did. What I do each year. I'm going to read. I think we have time for one more quick story, but this is going to call for a costume change. So excuse me a minute. This is my Salem, Massachusetts shirt, and I'm going to read a quick story out of this book, Pieces of Salem. It's not quite out yet, but it's in a preparation of Salem's coming upcoming anniversary. We were all supposed to write a piece for this book, and I wrote one. It's been accused of being non or being fiction, and it's supposed to be all fiction pieces, but I cheated a little bit. It's called Leslie's Retreat, February 26, 1775, based on a true historical incident. The first blood of the Revolutionary War was spilled in Salem. Not much, just a couple drops. Wine-loving British Colonel Alex Leslie had been dispatched with 240 troops to confiscate a battery of Minutemen cannons. Like Eisenhower on D-Day, Grant at Vicksburg, Hannibal crossing the Alps, Leslie marched forward. But at the North Bridge, he paused. Somebody had raised the drawbridge. Annoyed at this roadblock of military strategy, he called, "Aggravation without libation is tyranny." Not quite as memorable as the original quote about taxation and representation, but Leslie was getting thirsty. "Citizens of the Crown and of Salem, I command you to lower the bridge." Chief, ain't gonna happen. Then the colonel's indignation rose to a frenzied level. He stamped and he swore. He insisted he had orders to cross, and he would cross if it cost his life and the lives of his men. "I command you to submit to the powers of the great God Jehovah and the royal crown." Get bent, Johnny. Furious, Leslie considered ordering his fusiliers to fire, but the Minutemen were also armed, and the Brits were wearing uniforms they had got from Target with big red bullseyes dotted across the back. So instead, he just insisted he would cross that damn North River. "I'll do it if I remain here until autumn." Hey man, you better be out of here by Halloween. This place goes crazy. Leslie spotted three boats on the shoreline, which could ferry his men across. Joseph Witcher, a local distributing worker, was hacking holes in the boats with his axe, making them unsaleable and unsellable. Leslie ordered the slightly potted axer to drop his axe. Witcher's slurred response, "I don't take orders from some half-baked limey." Furious, Leslie used the point of his bayonet to poke the proud colonist in the chest. This was the first blood of the Revolutionary War. "Ouch, that really hurt. I need a shot of cognac." Then, parroting Patrick Henry, he said, "Give me Hennessy or give me death." Leslie hesitated. The day was growing short. His thirst was increasing. He said, "Look, let's be reasonable. I'm ordered to enter Salem, look around for some cannons. How about this? You guys lower the bridge. We come across about 20 yards. We take a quick look-see. We turn around and we go back home. My boss will be happy. Everybody's satisfied." It took the Minutemen less than a minute to decide. "Okay, we'll drink to that." And thus Salem showed how conflicts can be resolved peacefully, amicably, and almost soberly. Thanks for putting up with these two stories now. I'm going to sign off now. If you want to hit a like or a subscribe or a comment button, you can, but you don't have to. I never really understand any of that stuff. What I do like about these YouTube posts are there's a button called transcribe. I'm a little hard of hearing. If you hit that transcribe button, or transcript, I guess it's called, you can see the whole text being done. I also would like you to check out my shorts. I put up a bunch of short 1 minute shorts along with these half-hour shows. And finally, before we go, I'm going to try to pay. Let's see. Nah, I can't get it. I'm trying to get a shot of our sponsors. Our two sponsors are Stoogeroni. One day all pasta will look like the Three Stooges. And King Kong cookies. Cookies the size of a Buick hubcap. So please frequent those two sponsors of ours. I think we have a few minutes left. I'm not sure. But when I have some time left, I love to just indiscriminately read a poem from this book. It's a bright, elusive poet named Clay Ventry. The book is called Excellent Wildlife Photos. And just to show you how good this book is, I'm going to riffle through it to any page, okay? Any page, and read a poem. Lost like music, uncaged, she oceans her way into my dark and tiny opera of night. While I was wondering when exactly talking to pets became a pathology, or whether it's worth calling a soul with all the war making that it can bring. I guide over her heart until the resonance of her words up from under her rib cage washes me up onto morning, more or less like all mornings and all the days before when forfeit rolled over fortune and days piled up in a place built of cut up travel magazines and unopened cans of can openers. And this is how new ideas for cooking shows die, or new ideas for cooking shows die on the vine. How floral prints make their way into the world attached to someone who is otherwise dead and crying. Now a gentle minotaur is at the door, like water perfectly flowing. The beast has flowers and a message. Whatever isn't boring is worth doing, like a stevedore emptying a heart's cargo. I don't understand any of that, but Clay is great at jumping images and tones and things. So think about that too. Anyway, thank you for hanging on this long. Look after yourself, mates. We're going to be checking things out now, or checking out altogether.